Lots going on as usual. Today is Wednesday, April 30th, 2025, and the fallout of the Liberal win is becoming apparent. There are people who are responding after taking it all in, soaking all of what happened in on Election Day. People have started talking about, hey, Mark Carney, remember all those promises you made? It's time to pay the piper and actually follow through on those promises, developing our resources. Alberta had a list of demands that they said we need the next leader of the country to take these demands seriously, or we are going to seriously look at our future. Scott Moe said the same thing, and we've got a lot of that kind of stuff to talk about this morning. Alberta reminds Mark Carney of their demands. The Alberta votes, well, Danielle Smith has created a situation where if Alberta wants, they can vote for a referendum on anything they want. And so they're already 99% of the way to voting to trigger that referendum already, less than a day. Canada's on the brink of losing AAA ratings and an economic recession if Mark Carney is able to institute his plans, and the Bloc says there is no future for oil and gas. And so there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we've got to start in Alberta. And Maureen says this is fantastic. Carney has his work cut out for him. Premier Danielle Smith is asked about her damaging Canada and by doing all of the things that she's doing. And she says, actually, it's Mark Carney and the Liberals and the Trudeau Liberals who damaged Canada, and there is a constitution and we're going to follow it. So here's Danielle Smith being fiery as usual. Here we go.
The federal government has taken hostile action.
Oh my gosh. It has been 2 days since the last incident of too fast talking. Apologies, everyone. Apologies. Here we go. I do listen to it at that speed regularly. Here we go.
The federal government has taken hostile actions against Alberta and against the Constitution and against our right to develop our resources. And every action we have taken has been to reassert that the Constitution matters, the division of powers matters. And so I, at the very beginning of the campaign, said whoever got elected, I would expect them to address the 9 offensive pieces of legislation and policy that prevent us from being able to exercise our constitutional jurisdiction to develop our resources. We want to see a guaranteed access to economic corridors that include pipelines to get to new markets. We want the repealing of Bill C-69 so that we do not have an unending process for approvals that essentially means no more pipelines can be built. We need to lift the tanker ban off the BC coast. We need to eliminate the oil and gas emissions cap that has been proposed, which is a production cap. We need to scrap the so-called clean electricity regulations. We need to end the treatment of plastics as toxic. We need to abandon the net zero car mandate. We need to return oversight of the industrial carbon tax fully to provincial jurisdiction. And we need to halt the federal censorship of energy companies. I mean, this is all very reasonable requests. And so I've put that on the table. I know that the opposition leader said that they were very reasonable. Prime Minister Carney, it's a little unclear. And so I'm going to work over the next 6 months to try to get those things addressed. Because if it is the case that there's a consensus now about getting our energy to market, getting our resources to market, finding new markets, these are kind of the baseline to reset the relationship with Alberta.
And so you mentioned
that's the bare minimum, she says. And here's another video of Danielle Smith. This is a little more concise. Here we go. She says,
to the new Prime Minister and the Liberal Party, I have one message. Alberta has had enough. Enough with Ottawa trampling over our provincial jurisdiction like Canada's Constitution doesn't exist. Enough with the meaningless virtue signaling climate policies that only make Canadians poorer and threaten our energy security. Enough of their screw the West, we'll take the rest mentality. Enough with their soft on crime policies that let repeat offenders roam the streets on bail. Enough with their unsafe supply, their open border policies, their censorship laws, the list goes on and on. To the new Prime.
So we'll see. I mean, if you believe the results, and we've got a whole section called rigged out here. So we'll talk about that at the end. Well, not at the end, but midway through the show, I guess. But that's what Canada voted for. They don't want to fix the drugs. They want more drugs from the government, please. And also more handouts. If you could hand out more money, give me more money, please, says all of Canada. And it's very, very strange because that's not the feeling I get on the ground. I don't think more money injected, being used by the political parties to buy votes, is going to help your average rank and file Canadian. Sorry, my ear things keep falling out, so I have to keep adjusting them. Sheila Gunn Reed says, Alberta just made a referendum on separation realistic, and they did it the day after Mark Carney became Prime Minister. Here's what you need to know. Yesterday, Mark Carney won a Liberal minority thanks to Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada. Today, Alberta introduced a bill that quietly makes it possible to hold a referendum on leaving Canada. Coincidence? Not a chance. In the UCP's new Elections Statutes Amendments Act is a change to the Citizens Initiative Act, a law that allows regular people to propose referendums even on constitutional issues like separations. Until now, it was a joke. Under Jason Kenney, the rules required signatures from 20% of all eligible voters in just 90 days. That's over 600,000 names, impossible for any grassroots movement. It was built to fail. Danielle Smith just changed that. Now you only need 10% of people who voted in the last election. That's just over 208,000 signatures, doable with enough momentum. It's not just symbolic anymore. Let that sink in. As the Laurentian elite cheers Carney's coronation, Alberta just unlocked a legal path to breaking away from Ottawa. This isn't saber rattling, it's legislation. Yes, the bill includes other changes, bans vote tabulators, tightens ID rules, allows special ballots for anyone, brings back corporate union donations with disclosure, but the referendum clause is the real change. Albertans have been watching the Liberals hijack their resources, demoralize their industries, ignore their votes, and attack our culture of freedom and self-reliance. Now they've been handed a tool to fight back, not with protests, not with hashtags, not with a referendum. And for the first time in Alberta history, it's not a fantasy, it's a form, it's a timeline, a number, 208,000. I mean, it was 600,000 before, so first time in history, second time in history. This change doesn't guarantee Alberta's exit, but it opens the gate. And now the question is, who's ready to walk through it and who will follow after? I'm concerned that they're going to use this to allow people to put this all together and then, oh, so close, but it didn't happen. Oh man, you needed 60%, you got 59%. Oh, shucks darn, try again next time. And they'll allow you to spend that energy. And that is similar to an attack. It's like lawfare. They'll let you punch yourself out, right? And then when you're all punched out, they'll say, oh, don't worry. We'll just take care of the country while you're tired about this whole separation fight. And you're tired, and you're genuinely tired. And so it's like, oh, whatever. I guess if everybody wants this, and it's not that everybody wants this, it's just that we don't have control of the media, we don't have control of the elections, we don't have control of anything. And so if I've got a guy at the end of this series of tabs that says if voting changed anything, they wouldn't let you do it. So I think that's accurate. Maybe that should have been the title of today's show. Theo Fleury says, today, I'll say something I thought I'd never say. Last night I became an Alberta separatist. Communism, they say, is only a generation away. The Liberals' strategy of buying the mainstream media in Canada worked. The whole election was rigged. That was just one aspect of the rigging. We are in the fight of our lives now. It will now take united non-compliance to win against the communists in charge. The true north is no longer strong and free. Eventually, you run out of other people's money. Yep, that's all happening. Here's the separation change.org thing. And don't go sign up on change.org. Change.org they will spam the crap out of you, and it's unbelievable. And not that I think that, I'm not sure if change.org is the vehicle of this. Usually there are other what are they called? Petition websites, right? Is this the official one? Because change.org is very, very suspect for me. Anyway, Dr. Clown says, Alberta has reportedly surpassed the required 177,000 signatures to trigger a referendum process. I think it's 208, but anyway. And all of that in just one day. If this happens, Canada is finished. If Alberta goes, he's right, Canada is finished, because Alberta is the money in Canada. And so if they're gone, we're done. And I don't even think it would take that long. If Alberta went independent or joined the United States, pretty quick, it would be like uncorking time thing, like a sand time. I can't remember what they're called. Anyway, here's the actual change.org petition. It's got 198 now. The other screenshot had 192, and the goal was 200,000. And I think they're going to probably surpass that today. We'll see. Wild and crazy stuff. Here's these guys. They're talking about, can Canada be saved? This is talking about the invasion, and they say probably not. I think this is encouraging Alberta separatism, but here we go. This is from the Levine Show.
There is no way that Canada can be saved. We have brought in so many.
Is this fast? I can't even tell. It is fast. I can't even tell. I'm sorry. I'll respond. This has been 10 minutes since the last incident.
No way that Canada can be saved. We have brought in so many immigrants, and we have diluted our values to such a high degree that we don't even know what the nation of Canada is anymore. Go to Brampton. Go to Surrey. Go to Edmonton and Calgary right now. You will not recognize the place that you are in. We're not bringing in the world's best and brightest, folks. We had very high standards for bringing people in, and we were bringing in great immigrants who are contributing to our economy. We are now bringing in people who cost the Canadian taxpayer an average of $3,500 a month, which is more than our elderly get from OAS and CPP combined on average. We are right now a hotel for the world's welfare cases. Our productivity has not gone up in the last decade. That means we've brought in 4 million people and see no increase in productivity. But it gets worse. We haven't seen any GDP growth. I think it's over the last 10 years, 0.97. When you account for things like inflation and immigration, we have seen a decrease in our quality of life over the last decade, and it's only going to get worse. So do I think Canada can be saved? Absolutely not. Not only do I not think that it can be saved, I think that if we try to save it, it will be just like, you know, those horrible, tragic stories where someone swims out to help their drowning friend and they both die together. It's time to leave. And if we don't get out now, then I suggest getting out.
Alberta is the friend who's being dragged down by the rest of the country right now. That's what he's saying. And it's a good analogy. It's not strictly incorrect, I don't think. Here's Scott Moe talking about Mark Carney's win.
Begin by thanking all of the party leaders as well as all of the candidates for their efforts in the most recent federal election. I also want to say thank you to all of the campaign workers as well as their family members that supported this endeavor. It's no small thing to put your name forward, to campaign for what you believe in, and to have the courage to accept the outcome of the voters. Well, Canadians have spoken, and I want to congratulate Prime Minister Mark Carney on his election. Canadians have given your government a new mandate, and while you had strong support in many parts of Canada, many people, including most here in Saskatchewan, well, they voted for a degree of change. And now it's up to you to show that you heard that message and to deliver that very change for Saskatchewan, for the industries here that help drive the Canadian economy, and for Saskatchewan families and individuals. Last night you said you wanted to work with both Saskatchewan and Alberta. You've said you want to make Canada into a world-leading energy superpower, and that's great to hear, but those can't be just words. You see, policies matter. Policies really matter. And some of your government's policies are going to need to change in order for Canada to achieve that goal. You said that we must deal with the U.S. from a position of strength, and I couldn't agree more. And making Canada the world's leading energy superpower would be a pretty good start and a pretty good position of strength to work from. We have some ideas and some suggestions on how we could be able to do that, and what policies that your new government may need to change or alter in order for us as Canadians to achieve that goal. This is an opportunity for you to hit the reset button on the federal government's relationship for Saskatchewan, and it's an offer that we make, and I hope you take it. I would like to work with you to build a strong and growing Saskatchewan within a strong and united Canada. So I look forward to meeting with Prime Minister Carney as soon as possible so that we can start working together to achieve that goal.
So Scott Moe is being optimistic? I don't know. We'll see. The Toronto Police are trying to be optimistic as well. The TPA congratulates Prime Minister Carney, and we look forward to working with your government. In response to our letter, we learned of your position on issues like sentencing guidelines, bail reform, border security, and support of our members. We're eager to see you implement these changes, and we'll hold your government accountable if you don't. You will have many competing priorities over the coming days, weeks, and months, but our communities and our members want public safety to be one of them. So there's the Toronto Police Association's Mark Carney letter. And this guy is the guy who's saying, now I'm not advocating for violence, but I think that he's making a point here that Canadians need to understand. We are voting largely to keep in place a huge system of, what is it? There's a word for it. I can't remember the word. all of the commitments that the government makes. And all of that is very, very expensive. And a lot of people really like that. But along with all of that comes with a whole bunch of fraud. And it looks like Donald Trump has found a way to separate the fraud from the commitments. And we are not doing that. We're just closing our eyes and allowing the fraud and the commitments because we really like the commitments. That's like the chocolate cereal, right? It's like we really like the chocolate cereal. I'm not willing to give up the chocolate cereal. I'll look past the fraud, but I'm not willing to give up the chocolate cereal. It's the red button issue, right? Catherine Austin Fitts was talking about with Tucker Carlson yesterday, the red button issue. 100 people in her audience, only one would push the red button. The red button means all the fraud is gone, but the red button also means you are now self-sufficient. If you send $1 to Washington, Washington is not sending $1.19 back. And she says, it turns out most of the constituents want that 19 cents. They want their chocolate cereal. They give me the chocolate cereal, they say. I don't care about this. I don't care about freedom. I don't care what the Constitution says. I don't really care about election fraud. I don't really care about all the money you're stealing from us with USAID. I want that 19 cents. And so that's what drives things. So I'm not advocating. I want to be super clear about this. I'm not advocating for violence, but this guy is making a point that if you want to change, if you want to take all those commitments and all of those chocolate cereal pieces and throw them all away and start fresh, you want to get rid of this system, then you have to do something other than vote for a different guy. The voting thing is not going to fix the problems that we've got. And I'm not even sure that Donald Trump's solution to do this without shooting guns is going to work. Maybe, but historically, I don't think he's got history on his side, but maybe he does. Maybe this is oversampling one side and undersampling the side that did with diplomacy what he's usually done with weapons and violence. I'm not advocating for violence. I'm just saying this guy's got a point. Here we go.
If voting could change anything, voting would be illegal. Democracy is a scam. Democracy is a system created by those in power to make poor people think you can radically transform your reality without violence and revolution. That's all democracy. That's why America says we got to make the world safe for democracy. Why you got to make the world safe for democracy? Because if most of the people in the world woke up, they would understand a ballot ain't gonna change shit. Bullets do. Show me a revolution, queen, that's ever changed anything show me a change that's ever come through elections and not revolution. Did the Chinese revolution come through elections? No. Did the Russian revolution come through elections? No. Did the Cuban revolution come through elections? No. Did the American revolution come through elections? No. Did the African I
don't know about the African revolution. The thing with the American Revolution is the Americans now, are supposed to be living in the fallout of the American Revolution. They're supposed to be living under that system. And that system is what? Is he advocating for that system to be removed? I don't think I'm advocating for that system to be removed. What Trump's trying to do is restore that promise of the founding fathers in the United States. I'm trying to advocate for the removal of the fraud and keep a lot of the commitments, but some of the commitments are fraudulent too. So we need to separate the fraudulent ones from the non-fraudulent ones. USAID is an example. Global Affairs Canada is an example. Ukraine funding is an example. All sorts of examples exist up and down. And the Green Slush Fund, another example. There are so many examples of fraud that are baked into our system that it's going to be really difficult to undo. And when we're voting, well, there's people who are working within the system that oversees the voting that have a vested interest in keeping the system exactly the way it is right now. And so we're against some headwinds that we're not likely to win against. And they've got power and they're not going to give it up. Like, they're not going to give it up super easy. So I hope I'm wrong, but they're not. Here is all of the things, all of the problems, all of the stuff that is getting swept under the rug. Nobody is going to solve these problems moving forward. Carney's not going to solve these problems. Poilievre's not going to solve these problems. Nobody's going to solve these. Jagmeet Singh's not going to solve these problems. Nobody's going to solve these problems. And without solving these problems, then we are continuing down the road of closing our eyes and hoping that the flood in our basement goes away. And we're not going to actually do anything active about dealing with the flood in the basement. Why would we do that? We just hope it goes away, right? Or it sorts itself out somehow, right? Whatever needs to happen happens, and we don't have to worry about it too much. And that's not a good strategy, because we're just the whole house is going to get impacted negatively because of this flood that you're ignoring in the basement. Legacy media, or excuse me, the legacy of the Trudeau regime and the NDP Liberals. The Bill 293, Canadian sovereignty, C63, controlled speech, although C63 did C63 pass? I don't think C63 passed. S210, digital ID, S275, Bank of Canada reform, C223, universal basic income, C11, censorship, C21, disarm law abiding citizens, C18, more censorship. Arrive scam, Winnipeg lab, SNC Lavalin, Aga Khan trip, 84,000 Jamaican vacation, $6,000 a night for a single room. And the list goes on and on and on. So we're in a situation where all of this stuff is just never going to get dealt with. We're going to pretend that that's just what a prime minister does, and who needs to have accountability for any of that? And the new prime minister, he has no interest in actually addressing any of this. They're not even sitting until the end of May. End of May is the first week of sitting, which at least they're not sitting today passing censorship laws today, right? They're taking their time with it, but I have no doubt censorship laws are coming, and I'm upset about that, but I don't know how to deal with it, because it seems if there's censorship laws in place that look anything like what Guilbeault was, or excuse me, not Guilbeault, Verini was going to push through, then anybody in media, anybody who says anything online, even having a social media account, doesn't make any sense in Canada. Like, you basically have to turn yourself off, because if you don't turn yourself off, if you insult somebody in public, like, I bite my thumb at you, sir, and then they say, oh yeah, and they go find your YouTube channel and they say, I'm terribly offended by what this person said. Oh my gosh. And then now I'm on the hook for $70,000. 50,000 goes to the complainant and 20,000 to the government. Where's the downside, right? Like, you could get a job making $150,000 a year being offended by 3 people, and that's it. And like, the whole thing is the risk reward doesn't make any sense. So it is crazy what's happening. But the government seems lackadaisical. I hope they don't pass it, and I hope I'm able to continue doing what I do. But Carney has said that he wants to pass internet censorship laws, and he's got a de facto majority, so he's going to pass them. So hope I'm wrong. Anyway, Mark Nixon says, we could have elected a government that promised no summer break until key laws were passed, including Affordability and Jobs Act. Instead, Parliament is going on holiday for over 100 days from now to September 15th. But don't worry, they'll fight hard to make life affordable after their vacations. So they're going to work for a month in May. And I don't know what these asterisk days are. I don't know what that means. Work from home days, probably. So, I mean, they're liberals after all. And then they're sitting in September. They start sitting in September 15th. Right? So Labor Day and then some extra time after that. You got to make sure you get some rest from your vacation. Brian Passafume says, Prime Minister speaks with President Trump today. So April 29th, Prime Minister Carney speaks with the President of the United States. Today, the Prime Minister and President Trump spoke. President Trump congratulated Carney on his recent election. The leaders agreed on the importance of Canada and the United States working together as independent sovereign nations for their mutual benefit. To that end, the leaders agreed to meet in person in the near future. I don't know how anybody could believe anything that comes out of Carney's media unit, right? Like, there's nothing. Why would I believe anything? Why would I believe them at all? It's crazy town. Like, he lies all the time. The last time he had a call with Trump, he lied about the content, saying that Trump was very respectful of Canada's sovereignty, when in fact he was not. Here's the Bloc, and the Bloc says we're in a very good position, and no more pipelines in Quebec because reasons. Here we go.
The fact that there's no future for oil and gas, at least in Quebec and probably everywhere, and this has to be said and protected. I have a brand new weapon to do that. Mr. Bonin will be extraordinary carrying that message. The fact that there's no future for oil and gas, at least in Quebec and probably everywhere.
I just wanted you to hear that twice. No future for oil and gas in Quebec and everywhere. Cut off the oil and gas to Quebec. They don't need it. There's no future there for them. So whatever, right? They don't want the oil and gas. They think it's bad. Cut them off, right? What's silly? What a silly statement. So Blanchette is fully on board with Carney's radical environmental policies, or radical environmental zealotry, and we'll see how long that lasts, right? And there were a bunch of people who said, oh, if I could vote for Mark Carney to be prime minister, or not Mark Carney, excuse me, Blanchette to be prime minister, I would. And I was like, well, you kind of can, I guess. He's a Bloc person, but you could write in Bloc Quebecois. No, if you don't have a candidate, you can't vote in the riding. Why can't you do that? I saw somebody write this yesterday saying, I support the PPC. I live in a riding that doesn't have a PPC candidate. Why can't I write in PPC to support the party? and give them, however, because each party gets, if they get a certain amount of votes, they get a certain number of, a little bit of money per vote, right, for building their party or something like that, taxpayer dollars. Anyway, why can't you do that? And I thought that was a valid question, very, very astute. Blacklock's reporter says, data confirms half a dozen NDP MPs were the third place finishers as Jagmeet Singh drove party to worst finish since CCF James Woodsworth in 1935. People are right to be angry. Yeah, well, Jagmeet Singh is a communist, open communist, who attacked everybody about everything and was a complete idiot for most of the time that he was in the House of Commons, honestly. Critical Compass says the historic collapse of Jagmeet Singh's NDP is the reason the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre lost. 7,000 of 8,000 NDP votes from the 21 election moved Liberal to deny the most popular politician in Canada, and even then they barely did it by 4,000 votes. So here's the 21 election result. Pierre Poilievre had 50% of the vote. I think it was 49.89% of the vote. And he had 35,000 votes. In 2025, he got 38,000 votes. But Fanjoy got 42,000 votes. So the NDP only got 1,100 and the Greens only got 535. Whereas before, the NDP got 8,000. And the Greens got 1,300. So it's pretty wild. 8,000, like that's 10,000, 34. It shouldn't have really been that competitive. Even if you add the NDP and the Greens up with the Liberals, Pierre Poilievre, I think, still beats them. Yeah, I think he still beats them. So 24, 25, it's close, but I think he still beats them. So there's shenanigans all over this. This doesn't look above board at all. It doesn't look at all above board. PPC says, Maxime Bernier says, many people may be wondering today, is there a future for the People's Party? The answer is yes, of course there is. In only 6 years, our presence has had a huge impact on Canadian politics, even though we've not yet elected a member of Parliament. We propose a unique mix of principles and policies that no other party offers. 6 years ago, the PPC was the only party talking about the disastrous impact of mass immigration on our economy and society. Today, everybody knows that we were right. The PPC was the only party that opposed lockdowns and vaccine mandates during COVID years. The PPC is the only party that wants to protect our children against the crazy gender ideology. The PPC is the only party that fights for provincial autonomy and proposes a radical decentralization of the Canadian Federation. The PPC is the only party that believes CO2 is food for plants and not pollution. The PPC is the only party that wants to drastically downsize our big fat government in Ottawa. Without the PPC, there would be no debate on some of the most important issues facing Canada today. Canadian politics would shift even further to the left. The coming years will be difficult. We can expect more disastrous policies from the Liberals and more weak opposition from the fake Conservatives, but the PPC will still be there to offer different solutions. We will continue to force the establishment media and parties to debate our ideas, and we won't compromise our values. Thank you to the candidates, our volunteers, and to the thousands of Canadians who supported us in this campaign. And to the others, I want to say the People's Party will be there when you're ready. And so they're continuing. And Chris, who's the Rumble guy, he says, I thought this was CPC, so this should go in the CPC section. Sorry about that. Here is FNL. He says, is the People's Party the victim of a Conservative plot, electoral fraud, or more coincidences? So this is in French, but he says, in a shock statement, the leader of the PPC claims that several candidates, after serious interviews and sharing the party's values, mysteriously refused to finalize their candidacies at the last minute. The reason given, trivial, not serious, he says, but behind these withdrawals, he points the finger at a fraudulent maneuver. The Conservative Party would have paid these bogus candidates to withdraw and bring down the PPC. I've said it before, the Conservative Party is morally and intellectually corrupt. They cheated in their leadership race in 2017, and now they're trying to crush us because they're fearful of our ideas. He hammered the Conservatives. So yeah, interesting, and we'll see. And Alex Jones has Max Bernier on as well, and there's a 20-minute interview here. Globalist Mark Carney won the Canadian election on the 51st state referendum. People's Party of Canada founder and leader Maxime Bernier gives expert analysis on the WEF puppets installed as Canada's new Prime Minister and explains why he won. So we'll leave that. Link is in the description if you're interested. On the CPC side of things, Chris Pavlowski, the guy who created Rumble, or he's the CEO of Rumble, he says, I tried to arrange a meeting, or Pierre Poilievre to meet Donald Trump Jr. at a Rumble live event in Toronto last year. While the Liberals attacked and illegally attempted to shut down our event, Pierre Poilievre refused to even engage or meet Don Jr. That's not what winners are made of. I agree. I agree. There's a whole bunch of things that Poilievre did that I thought were big missteps for no good reason at all. Like unjustified missteps for nothing. Andrew Lawton won, and I wasn't sure if Andrew Lawton won. I said before the campaign that I think that Lawton's just kind of a regular guy and who likes politics, and I like that he was running. I'm glad that he won. So good for him. Congratulations for him. And he says, thank you, Elgin St. Thomas, London South. It's an honor to be elected as your next member of parliament. So we'll see how that plays out. And I mean, it sucks that it's a conservative, but whatever. I'm just kidding. Liz says, I still can't believe Pierre bashed President Trump at his concession speech. So I didn't realize this was his concession speech because I thought it was just a random campaign speech that he was bashing Trump, or like the speech before he knew he lost. But I think that that's a weird way to, well, this guy, these people are correct. Liz says, I still can't believe he bashed Trump at his concession speech. Of all the things to say, he chose to criticize America and the most popular president in American history. We'll stare down the tariffs, blah, blah, blah. He just doesn't get it, says Jason. He should be bashing the United Nations and the WEF for their mass migration agenda. Yeah, like what? You're upset at Donald Trump for you losing? Holy smoke, man. You missed the whole point. You missed everything about that. Tamara Litch is the reason why Pierre Poilievre lost, according to Sheila Copps. I don't know. Sheila Kopp says, you can thank Tamara Litch for what happened in Carleton. Poilievre backing the occupiers was a huge mistake. It cost him the election. I don't think so. But he didn't really back the Freedom Convoy. The occupiers? Sheila Copps is cracked. I think she lives in Mexico. So it's pretty wild. Tamara Litch says, I'm incredibly honored this morning to wake up and see that Sheila Copps believes I'm this important, this powerful, and this dangerous. Hilarious. Daisy says, I'm sure it had nothing to do with the 91 people on the ballot, the redrawing of the riding, the boundaries to include more urban Ottawa, and the 40,000 new people in the riding. Nothing to do with any of that. All of that is election rigging. All of that are examples of election rigging. And Viva Fry is responding to Sheila Copps. He says, once again, Sheila Copps is both a disgusting human and wrong. If anything, I would say that Poilievre lost his riding in part because he did not support Tamara Litch, Chris Barber, Pat King, and the face of egregious government persecution. It is, in fact, quite demoralizing to be relying on a leader who simply does not lead in the face of injustice. Yeah, good point, Viva Fry. But go on mocking the victims of government abuse and persecution, Sheila. We've come to expect nothing less from the so-called liberals. Yep, absolutely. So the CPC is off twisting in the wind somewhere, not being very relevant, in my opinion. And Sheila Copps is hanging out in Mexico getting drunk. Julian Assange says, we're going to talk about rigged and then we'll cut off the stream. I know we're a little long today, but Julian Assange says 7.3 million Canadians voted by mail, not in person. The Auditor General's report over 5 million fake social insurance numbers in Canada, which is all you need for a mail-in ballot. Mail-in ballots make a detection of election fraud practically impossible. Most countries ban mail-in ballots. They have seen massive voter fraud problems. Yep. So huge amounts of mail-in ballots. Here is, somebody sent this to me yesterday, so thank you. Mary Ann is sharing this on Facebook, I think, and she says, I worked as an information officer in the federal election on April 28th, 2025. I was at the Dr. Knox School polling station in Kelowna, BC from 5:45 a.m. until 8:30 p.m. Why do they have to work 13 hours a day? That seems like a lot. I want to put in writing what I witnessed. 1, numerous voters, at least 50%, asked if they could use their pen that they brought to vote. I said yes. Later, after the polls closed, I was then asked to do the tally, record the choice of vote on the ballot. As the deputy returning officer called out the name of the candidate selected, I was to record it. I noticed none of the ballots were in pen, only pencil. I know for a fact I sent most voters that had a voting card to desk 17. The total votes tallied at desk 17 were the most of any other desk in the polling station. I asked my DRO why none were in pen. No answer was offered. These ballots were put in an envelope and sealed. My signature is on record as I tallied the total. I noticed many voters turned away that had proper ID. I talked with many to ask why they were refused, as these voters were very upset and felt concerned that they were refused. It turned out that an entire apartment building on Valley Road was missing from Elections Canada information, meaning none of the residents had voter cards. Without the cards, they needed to provide valid ID. Without proof of the building existing, none of the occupants could vote. You couldn't bring up Google Earth or something like that? Like, hold on a second. even with valid passports, driver's licenses, mortgage docs, rental agreements, bills, it was mind-boggling to watch these people turned away. I brought each person to the supervisor to help them vote, and the supervisor said that there was nothing they could do without the Elections Canada approval. Elections Canada was not accessible most of the day. By the afternoon, no supervisor or senior officer could get through for any verification. Over 60% of voters were under 35 this location. There were a handful of 70-year-olds and up. This was remarkable to see such a massive amount of youth. I lost count of how many youth told me it was their first time voting federally. I asked for stickers or anything to hand out. There was nothing for first-time voters or children attending with parents. One other information officer informed me that his wife was working at the head of the elections office in the Landmark building where all the special ballots were. The ballots were done very early, and you wrote the candidate name on the ballot. This was done for weeks. Other special ballots are the mobile voting and mail-in ballots. The ballots were not pre-counted. I spoke with this man after the polls closed, and after we talked, they're tallied to ask if his wife's was still counting. He said they did not finish yet, and that there was approximately 20,000 ballots. Strange that Kelowna called out a winner without that many ballots counted. Many voters spent the day going from polling station to polling station trying to vote because the Elections Canada website was not working, so no one could troubleshoot all the oddities with missing voter cards and locations of polling stations based on the address of voters. I can assure all Canadians what I saw in only one poll would have made a difference in the outcome of this riding. When an entire apartment building is missing, that's not a simple and significant issue. Hundreds of voters are not counted, and that will change the outcome of the elections. My experience is of only one poll in one riding in one city in BC. If it happened here, I'm safe to understand it happened in other places. That is one of endless reasons that Elections Canada was not reachable or our website working for most of the day. Very clear interference in the voting of eligible voters witnessed today. So yeah, it's rigged. It's rigged. Mike says, I've heard numerous reports of ballot boxes being removed and counted in malls and food courts without supervision. I grilled the officers about it when I voted. They seemed nervous for some reason. So here is video of people carrying the ballot boxes in bags and things like that.
I can't believe you're doing that.
What do you mean? I don't understand.
We're working for government.
I want to understand why these are just sitting on the street, how you took them into a taxi and you guys could just fill out anything you want and put them in the box. Is this a normal election? This is how elections are run? This is a complete fraud.
Why don't you go and speak to the people inside? They'll be happy to take care of you. We are working here. You're not allowed to.
I'm on public property. I can film whatever I want. And you guys are walking around with ballot boxes in a taxi? Wow.
Crazy stuff. And why is she upset? Why is she incredulous? I can't believe you're recording me. Tom Quiggin says, for the record, CTV called the election for the Liberals at 10:08 p.m. CBC called the election for the Liberals. CTV called at 10:08. CBC at 10:11. Polls in Alberta closed at 9:30 Eastern Time. So the election was called before the counting in Alberta and BC was really underway. Yes, it was. So that's interesting. James says, just spoke to a woman who tried to vote at 7:30 p.m., but all polling stations in Kamloops were closed at 7. Her voter cards and many others said polls were open until 8. She's rightfully upset. If you were in a similar situation tonight, please give our newsroom a call. So people, and then you can see the ballot saying polls are open until 8 p.m., Monday, April 28th, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sorry, I'm turning my head to the side so I can read it. So, yep. You can see it there. Here's Deb. Deb says, elections are rigged. Election Canada poll workers take ballot boxes home to store in their place of residence just prior to the election on Monday. A reporter videotapes 5 poll workers from the same location taking ballot boxes home. Seems very suspicious that this would be happening. Nothing to stop people from tampering with votes. Yep. And they're zealots, and they will tamper with votes. And it's incredible. We've already seen that video. Carry on. Alex Zoltan says Canada's spending more on news media subsidies than on disability benefits and pharmacare combined. That'll rig an election too. It will. It does. That's what happens. That's what's happening. Magic Beans says the population of the Maritimes, Newfoundland, Labrador, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick is approximately 1.9 million people. They receive 32 seats in total. Alberta's population reached 5 million in 2025, and they receive 34 seats. Alberta is neutralized by the East. I said this during the election night coverage on our stream, but when they realized Alberta would have 34 seats, they're like, we've got to destroy that. We've got to take that out. They don't get any seats. They don't get any say. So it's like having a husband and a wife. One's NDP and one is conservative. It nullifies the vote, right? Like it's a wash, right? So it nullifies that. Those 32 seats nullify Alberta's 34 seats. Nullified, gone, right? So it's all strategy. It's all, they play these games and we pretend that the game we play is not rigged. And the game we play is rigged 6 ways from Sunday. I'll tell you, worse than that. Food Professor is predicting the future. He says, I don't see how the Liberal government could fall before the end of its term. To bring it down, every single opposition party, NDP, Bloc, and Conservatives would need to vote against it. An unlikely scenario. The Liberals have options. The next election will likely take place in 2029 or possibly 2030. That's a pretty bitter pill right there. That's pretty terrible. Fake Mark Carney shows us what we're in store for the next little while. He says it's only one day after the election and internet censorship has already begun. So Mark Carney's ego is gone. He has to have the name start with something like fake or, parody Mark Carney or something like that. So people don't confuse him with the real Mark Carney. So he's changed that. And I mean, that law, caught myself there. That rule on X seems to not be a terrible one. I don't mind parody accounts and I don't mind knowing that they're parody accounts. It's quite helpful to know that they're parody accounts actually. But at the same time, I'm worried that the censorship is going to only get worse. And man, I hope I'm wrong about that, but it seems like we're set for the censorship to get worse. So we have to say goodbye to the stream. So thanks for watching, everybody. And hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful